Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am David Covell. I'm the president of Lodge 17. I'm also on the State Labor Council. With me today is JJ Dixon. She's the state FOP staff representative for District 2. Keith Brown, the Lodge 17 secretary, and also the chairperson of the Jacksonville Beach Labor Council. I also have Chris Carter and Scott O'Connell, who are both Lodge 17 members and on the Labor Council as well.
And for the city, we have, I'm Karen Nelson, Deputy City Manager, Mike Sofopoulos, City Manager, Ashley Gossett, CFO, Eric Holzhauser, our Labor Attorney, Kim Bennett, HR Director, Elise Broche, Legal Assistant, and behind you is Sandy Robinson, our City Attorney.
So a couple questions before we kick off, if you don't mind, Karen. Do we have any hard stop for this meeting? I know we ran into one a couple years ago.
3 o'clock is the next meeting that we have scheduled.
Okay, so 3, we got to be done by 3. And then another is, there was a pay study that was commissioned by the city. Are you guys considering that to be work product?
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, will the city's proposal be a package proposal?
For the economic proposals, yes.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know if we want to kind of go through the rigmarole of TAing off on all the articles, if it's just kind of a package proposal.
Yeah, well, we can certainly TA all the articles that neither
Okay.
side has any intention of having any proposals.
Okay.
But, yeah,
Do we want to go through that list of ones where we don't have
that'd be great.
a list?
That'd be fine. And I think that typically the ground rules are that you do the non-wage, discussions first. And then once that's completed or at least gone through, then you can pick up the negotiations over wages.
That's typically what we do. Yes, sir.
And, and the word tentative agreement means that you can tentatively agree on a particular article, subject to, later maybe changing that if something comes up. And the usual ground rule is you don't have a final agreement on any article until there's a complete agreement on the contract.
Correct.
So
I just wanted
to make sure we're singing out of the same.
And I wanted to make sure that that's what we understood it.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a typical, I'm sure
think
JJ will tell you that that's the way negotiations are normally conducted.
Okay. So we'll kind of go article by article here. Karen, I don't know if last year we used to pass them across and do all that. This year, I think we're a little bit closer. Did you just want to set them all aside and you and JJ can sign them or whoever's signing on behalf of the city?
I'll sign and.
Okay.
And if JJ is signing for you, we can.
Perfect.
You want to go ahead and try to get those done today? Those that we don't have any.
I would love to.
Sure.
Yeah, so you're just going to go through ones you don't have a proposed change to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good to me.
First would be the preamble.
Okay.
No changes from the city.
Okay. Why don't we walk through them and then I'll pull.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Take a little time.
Articles 1 through 4, recognition, strike prohibition, work requirements, management rights, and then non-discrimination. The FOP has no changes. Articles 5 and 6, we have some amendments to those we'd like to propose. Articles 7 through 10, rules and regulations, probationary employees grievance procedure, and outside employment. The FOP has no changes. Article 11, we have some language to propose. Articles 12 through 15, wages, education incentive, injury in the line of duty, and bereavement leave, we have no changes to. Article 16, we are proposing change to. Articles 17 through 21, insurance benefits, wellness and fitness, drug policy, annual leave and sick leave, no changes. Article 22, holidays, we are proposing a change. And then Articles 23 through 28, legal policy, promotion, personnel reduction, discipline and discharge, savings clause and bulletin board, we have no changes. 29 and 30, we are proposing changes. And then Appendix A and B, we have no changes.
We have no changes to A and B.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, of those, there are 3 that we the city will have some proposals for, that you mentioned that you have no proposals
Yes,
for.
ma'am.
We will potentially have some proposals for. Article 15 bereavement leave, and Article 20 annual leave, and 21 sick leave.
Okay.
So with those exceptions, we can go ahead and pull. No, I think I've got it. I'm more of a visual. I'm a visual learner. Eric, you got all that?
Yeah, I think so. Good. I think I've figured it out.
Like these can start going to JJ for signature. She supported us in the union. For the rest of them.
April.
Yes, ma'am.
AJ, you hear from Steve Amos at all?
I do. I talk to him all the time. He's doing great. He's
Good.
enjoying his grandkids and
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah, he's doing good.
How about Gary Evans? Is he still keep in touch
I
with
don't
him?
see Gary as often. You know, he's been sick off and on.
He has. I know his
Yeah.
wife was ill quite a
He
bit.
was ill a little bit there. I'm assuming he's doing pretty good because I haven't heard anything different lately.
All right, I think. Thanks, Mike.
Those are TA.
That's what you say, yeah.
Great.
So that's more than half. Go ahead and knock that out.
I like it.
One more.
I've only got 10 open articles according to my count.
I've got 12 if you count the appendices.
Oh, the appendices. I did not count the appendices.
These two.
Yeah. I got 5, 6, 11, 15, 16, 20, 22, 20, 21, 22, 29, 30.
That's it.
Karen, we have 5 packets put together that have the proposed changes to the articles as well as the pay schedule. We didn't know you guys were bringing everybody. Who would you like us to give these 5 to?
If you want to hand them to me, we'll, I think there's.
Do you want one going to
another
Mr. Robinson?
table. Pardon me?
Do you want one going to Ms. Robinson?
Yes, definitely one to Sandy, and then
No
we
cheating.
can share the rest if we have to.
No looking ahead, guys. Don't get ahead.
No, go ahead. You and Ashley, Eric, and if you can pass that one to Kim, I'll let- if that's enough that we can
I'll
report to
listen
them.
in and catch up. I know we don't have very much time.
Do you mind if we get started, Karen, while JJ's
No, I'm
scratching
fine
his
with
hand?
that.
Okay, perfect. So the first one would be Article 5, which is the union business. We are proposing that the city provide the union with 360-hour time bank to be used for union activities. The way that this time would be used would be authorized by the lodge president, just to verify that it is indeed a union function, and then the chief would have the ultimate authority of whether or not to grant the use of the time from that bank. We have several of our members that serve on state functions. They're required to go to the state conferences every year. There's 3 of those, and this would ease their individual burden of burning time to be able to attend those functions.
Okay. So just so I'm clear, you're proposing a total pool of 360 hours to be used by
Everybody that's in the
everybody
union.
in the union.
It is, does not carry over, resets on January 1, so it's a calendar year. And again, the chief would have retained the ultimate yay or nay based on staffing and everything else that's already existing in 5-1. And then we pulled out the without pay in 5-1, just to go along with 5-6, with the addition of that article.
Questions on that, Eric, or
I don't.
clarification or anything? Okay.
Okay.
But I guess the question is 360 is the total amount, not per employee, right?
Total pool time. Yes, sir.
I'll make sure that's.
I mean, if the city counters with per employee, we can. Article 6 is more of a housekeeping. The state lodge has requested that we go back to the old way of the dues not being paid to the state, but rather to the lodge. If you remember, that's how it was done prior to the 2017 contract.
Mhm.
So this is just the exact language that was from prior to the 2017 contract.
So this language will replace 6.2 and everything else would stay the same?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I apologize. I only included the sub-articles
That's
that we
fine.
would like to amend.
That's fine. If that's all you're proposing changes to, that's all we,
Toner's
As far
getting
as I'm concerned,
expensive,
that's
so
all
we're
we
just
need.
saving that. Article 11, Article 11.4, we move to strike the words "and sick leave" from the overtime computations. This, as you know, has always been something that we have proposed, and it became even more of a financial impact during COVID when our officers were essentially forced to take sick time to be able to quarantine. We understand completely that it was for the benefit of the department and the city as a whole. However, when they were forced to burn from that leave bank, they would then lose that overtime that they perhaps could have worked.
okay. Did you have any officers who were able to take advantage of any additional sick time that was COVID specific? Because we did have some.
Correct, there was a
provisions for-
conversion. To go back, I have not gone through and looked at who was affected and whether it was called, whether it was picked up by workers' comp, or whether it was individually on that officer.
Okay.
However, the city's policy still is that if you are exposed, symptomatic, you are suggested that you stay home, short of being mandated to stay home to avoid that risk of spreading it to the rest of the department.
Okay.
11.5 is more of a clarification. In a post-COVID legal world, we're now seeing telephones and telecommuting, teleconferencing being the norm for some parts of the judicial process, depositions. There's some judges still doing hearings via Zoom and other formats. All we're doing is clarifying that anytime an officer attends a court hearing, whether it be by phone, by teleconference, or in person, it is court time for the purpose of this article. In addition, we seek to clarify something that has kind of been a gray area, is what if the court occurs shortly after or connected to an officer's normal tour of duty? In that case, they would not receive the 3 hours minimum. They would be entitled to a 1 hour minimum plus whatever the time was. So for instance, if an officer shift ends at 7:30 in the morning and they have court at 8:30, court say gets over at 9, instead of getting a full 3 hours, essentially taking them to 10:30, they would receive that hour and a half of overtime. So again, it's always been a gray area, and this just really seeks to clarify what court time is and what would constitute court time.
Okay. Have you had a chance to read it? Do you
Yeah,
have any?
I don't really have any
do you need
questions on that.
clarification? Okay.
Article 16, resignation. This is adding 16.5. This goes back to our discussions I think it's been about almost 2 years now, about the definition of good standing.
Mhm.
We included the entirety of the MOU language that you had sent us, with the exception of the two words probation or. We don't feel that disciplinary probation should preclude an officer from resigning in good standing. And our basis for that is the CJSTC form. Whenever an officer separates from a police department, the agency fills out a form and sends it off to the state. Disciplinary probation is not something that would, in the state's eyes, be under any sort of cloud of discipline. We're also fearful of any administration that would open an internal investigation, include language in the final disposition of that internal, placing our employees under some sort of probationary status. Oftentimes, in some of the recent internals, the final disposition has included language that has been more akin to progressive discipline and somewhat superfluous. But our fear is that a nefarious administration could use the definition of good standing to avoid, an employee being able to resign in good standing at the end of a lengthy career.
So that MOU, I believe you prepared, it has been a couple of.
I think it went to
it's
Steve
been more
Amos,
than-
so it's been a
It's
while.
been a couple of years almost, but I think it was shortly after.
It was after the
labor
last
negotiations
internal.
last time. So I don't have it in front of me. So what you were proposing is the same language except for disciplinary probation.
The
right?
word probation or. So instead of the end serving a disciplinary, the language you sent said probation or. We just strike the words probation or. We have no problem with the disciplinary suspension. We just don't want the probation in there.
But this seems to preclude somebody from resigning in good standing if they're just potentially subject to.
No, sir. If you read that, it says at the time he or she gives notice, the employee is not subject to any unresolved criminal or ongoing internal affairs.
Right,
So if
but they are subject, then they wouldn't be in good standing, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we are not, we agree with that part, that if you resign while you have been noticed with the internal investigation, that is not good standing.
Okay,
But
so, but if there's potential for there being some kind of discipline, but it hadn't yet happened,
That is not good standing.
that's not good standing. But if you are definitely getting discipline in the form of a probation, that would be good standing. See, I'm just trying to figure out how that's consistent.
So disciplinary probation could be included on any final disposition in an internal investigation.
Correct.
If there is a probationary, whatever it is, placed in that disposition, we don't want that to prevent somebody from resigning in good standing. Again, we have no, if you are subject of an active, ongoing criminal or internal investigation and you resign, that is not good standing.
Yeah, I understand that.
If
But
you are the subject of a disciplinary suspension and you resign in that suspension, that is not good standing.
Let me ask you a question, Eric. If an individual is given a 15-day suspension
Yeah,
and they serve that 15-day suspension, and they come off of that 15-day suspension, and there's no probationary discipline attached to it.
right.
You serve your 15 days.
Right, you're done. Then you're back in good standing if you resign after that
Okay.
point in time.
And you come in on day 17 and continue your notice.
Right.
You're resigning in good standing,
I understand.
okay? But if an employee has been given a 6-month probationary period, all right, with the parameters of don't do A, B, C, or D again, or you're going to face either stiffer penalties or termination,
Right.
okay? This individual has a longer period in which to serve, but yet they're still allowed to work.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. What I'm sort of trying to get at is that one of your situations where somebody would not be in good standing is before they got any discipline. You know,
But as long as
may be
if
innocent.
they are subject to, and I would go as far as that, and David, you jump in here with me. If an officer course of conduct rises to the level of an internal investigation.
Right,
But that internal investigation has not been initiated yet.
yeah,
And that officer hasn't been put on notice yet. But everybody on the planet knows that's going to go to an internal. And he walks in and resigns before he's been given notice. I would concede that he resigned and was not in good standing because he knew what was getting ready to come down the track.
all right. Well, I'm just trying to think that, what I'm trying to get at is, it seems like somebody who has been tried and convicted, but just given probation is better off under this proposal than somebody who hadn't even been tried yet, who's just accused.
Again, but
That's, I mean, I'm not saying I understand the meaning of your proposal, but what I'm trying to get at is, it seems to me that there could be a situation that's more unfair to consider somebody not in good standing if they've just been accused but never been found guilty, versus somebody that's been found guilty and is put on probation. That's all I'm saying.
I understand, but again, we're drawing directly from criminal justice training and standards, that probationary discipline to them does.
Well, I hear that too. I'm just trying to figure out in my mind the logic of it. Okay, I understand the proposal.
all right. Article 22, holidays. We move to, or propose to, incorporate the federal holiday of Juneteenth and 19th of June into the list of holidays.
Okay.
Ooh, that would be the good stuff. Article 29, retirement or pension. We propose 4 changes to this article in the agreement. The first is the maximum benefit, or 29.3. When the 2014 pension modification was made, which definitely helped the overall financial picture of all the pensions here in Jacksonville Beach, that cap was at $90,000. Factoring in just the Social Security cost of living increases from 2014 to 2021, we're up 15.6%. What we're proposing is nothing more than adjusting that $90,000 cap for basically the inflation up to 105. The number comes out to 104,920 if you were to take the 15.6. So I don't like weird numbers, so I just rounded up to 105. But again, we just want that 90,000 to move with
Inflation.
yes, ma'am, with the cost of living.
Understood.
The other one is 29.8, the backdrop. We propose increasing the guaranteed rate, the annual rate of return, from 3% to 6%. The entire time that officers who elect to participate in the backdrop, that they're essentially in the backdrop, if you will, they're paying their pension contribution, and the city's return is well over 7%. It's just the actuarial rate of return. Was way up last year, but we're proposing to go up to, again, a more modest 6%. Any questions on that? Sorry, I've been kind of buzzing through it.
No.
Okay.
No, this is the same thing that you all proposed 2 years ago, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
For backdrop. And you did cost it out 2 years ago. Have you done any additional costing?
We didn't.
then?
I was going to
Okay.
go over that when we're done all
Okay.
the articles, because I'll be honest with you, that costs us a lot of time and money, and I just wanted to make sure that the city was open to any changes to the pension, and if that were the case, we'd go ahead and engage GRS, have them run the numbers, and be able to provide those to the city.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and finish walking through.
2910, we move to strike all of the premium money going back to the city. Our proposal is 50% will go to the city to offset the city's pension contributions. The other 50% will go to, in an equal share, all retirees and beneficiaries that are receiving benefits. This is a way for us to provide a quasi-COLA to our retirees who have not benefited from one.
So would you be proposing share accounts to be set up? Is
No,
that what
ma'am,
you're
because I
talking
don't
about?
believe we can set up
Okay.
share accounts for retired members. The share
So,
accounts are set up.
Mhm.
If you want to take the other half from the city, we can fund the share accounts.
So you're talking about just a cash distribution every year?
Yes, ma'am. Kind of that
Got it.
13th check.
Have you costed this out?
You haven't costed anything out.
Okay.
Well,
Understand
correct me if I'm
until-
wrong, it's a little over 300,000 was the 185 monies this year. So it'd be about
Is that
100.
right? I don't remember. But yeah.
Is that,
160, did you say?
it was about, I think it was 305, 308, something like that. A little over 300 for the 185. We beat the fire department again this year, so I'm happy.
I think it was like 163 that I looked it up.
Well, that was the weird, what, did that include all those weird back pay?
No, but that was just a one-time adjustment.
Okay,
So what you're talking about, the
Mhm.
300 would be inclusive of that one-time adjustment, which is.
so
not
the
an ongoing
adjust, I figured, I knew the
thing.
adjustment was done. I think those were applied
I
last
think we did
year.
apply the 150,000 that we had, yes,
Okay.
and so that was probably.
Correct, yeah, we're not, we know that was already negotiated
Yeah.
away. That
So
was just
the
an
annual
adjustment.
contribution was 160.
We'll look at it, yeah. Are you talking about the base or the additional? For the 160. Okay.
160 was the additional.
Okay,
We're talking about the base contribution to the pension funds?
no, we're talking about all the 185 monies. Yes, ma'am.
Let me get that.
All right, next article would be 2913, proposing a 1% COLA on the pension, and very similar to what we proposed 2 years, this would be a 10-year sunset COLA. So for the first 10 anniversaries after a retiree retires, and let me go back and qualify that with at least
20 years of service.
Of-
Anybody that retires with less than 20 years of service doesn't get this at all.
Correct, and it would be credited service, so not subject to the any of the buyback. So that it would actually be a 20 years of working.
Of working for
Yes,
this
ma'am.
organization.
So that 10-year, after that 10th anniversary adjustment, the COLA would cease and that number would be fixed.
When you costed this out in 2020, was it under these same
No,
provisions?
ma'am, it was,
Okay.
the one in 2020 was a 2%. It included there's way too many factors. It would be apples to oranges.
So it's not the same
No, ma'am.
proposal under any circumstances. Okay, got it.
Article 30 is the easy one, just a date change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we can TA that one.
Sure. We're proposing a change. But the city, and the reason I know that when we came to this table 2 years ago was that you guys wanted a 2-year, and that actually became a point to the very end. So the city is open to a 3-year.
We're open to a
Okay.
3-year. We can wait on this though and make sure that we can actually get there.
Okay.
And then.
Because
we can
our proposal
TA
is a 3-year.
Good, okay.
So we want to.
Ours as well. We're
Okay,
hoping to
good.
get to a 3-year agreement.
Article XX, we didn't know where you guys wanted to slide it in. All this does is take the language from the city's military leave policy and incorporate it into our contract. We had an issue with an officer several years ago, and we were told by a since retired HR director that because it was in not in our contract, it was not a grievable or challengeable article. So we just moved to bygones be bygones. We just want to have some language, whether this is the way the city wants to do it, but we want to make sure that military leave is addressed in some way to comply with ERISA and everything else.
How long ago was that?
Years ago.
Yeah, do
Okay,
you remember the name of the?
I do, but I don't want to.
Well, because I think I know.
Again, I'm
the
not-
situation.
So
Yeah,
I just rather be safe than sorry. Just try and incorporate this language into our collective bargaining. That way,
Nobody can use the excuse if it's not in
Yes.
the contract, you can't grieve it.
Okay, and I understand that. I hope that that won't be necessary because, I mean, we don't want to have to incorporate all of our personnel policies
Correct.
into your
And neither
contract.
do we.
neither do we. We
But-
just,
But more importantly, we're in the process of revising our policies right now, our non-union personnel policies. Military leave is one of those. Those more legal policies, I refer to them, we're almost, always looking at those to make sure that they're in compliance with state statute. So every time state statute changes, we have to update our policy if we incorporate, a lot of detail from state statute. That would mean then that we would have to come back to your contract and make those changes every time there's a change to those policies. I would like it if we could find a better way to reach a level of trust so that, we can alleviate your concerns.
Well, I can tell you that working with a different HR director and a different city manager was like hitting my head on this table.
Mhm,
When-
mhm.
Just because it's not in my contract, but it's in the city's policy, all right? It is written, and if it's not in my contract, the city policy should kick in, because this is a city employee, and
Right.
we were told,
Well,
no.
if it's a situation I think it was, and I can't remember the name of the person, but it was a woman that we looked at the law and the law did not support her position. So she was mistaken on the law, and I think that was part of the response, was that she wasn't entitled to what she was asking for. And by the way, it's also not grievable. It wasn't the only.
well, again, we're not,
Right, yeah.
I don't, history's done, it's gone.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure, especially because we have the military buyback provision in the pension now. And obviously that's a huge market for potential personnel for law enforcement. We just want to make sure that we can tell anybody that's interested that there is, I don't know, protection, if you will. We would love, yeah, whatever, whether it needs to be a reference in the contract, I know it's pretty much covered in the
Mhm.
management rights section.
Mhm.
We just wanted to address it. And if you guys and Eric says, hey, it's covered under this article,
Mhm.
we're good.
And I will tell you, one of the things that we are doing in that process of updating our personnel policies, we've added a clause there that clearly defines the order of operations, if you will, but where your contract is silent, it specifically says that we would then, if there's a conflict between our personnel policy and your contract, then the contract
Yes.
takes precedence. But if your contract is silent, then you all fall under the personnel.
And that's the way we had always,
Um,
at least,
And that's fully our intention. I remember now what Eric is talking about. In that particular case, there was more to the issue than just the matter of a
Correct.
silent contract. We could talk about it and see if there's some way we can give you all some assurance, but I really don't want to get into the business of trying to incorporate all of our personnel.
And I'm in agreement with that, and I would be comfortable with some type of clause within the contract that says anything that this contract is silent on, which is addressed by city personnel policies, we will defer to city personnel policies.
So if we
I
may
mean,
be able
that,
to.
because the next HR director that comes in here 5-10 years from now, all right, can't make that claim again, that it's not in your contract, all right, you can't grieve it. And we all know that that's a bunch of hogwash.
Well, part of the problem I don't think that's necessarily hogwash if you can't grieve something that's not in the contract, but one of the problems too is some of these laws have their own administrative enforcement procedure that, in case of USERA, for example, is very effective. I mean, the government's very aggressive about enforcing those things. And if you make the same thing grievable, then you have the potential of somebody going to take 2 bites at the apple, file a grievance, and they don't get that their way there, or lose an arbitration. They file another procedure. And sometimes one way to address that is say, if you got a choice, but you're not doing both. But that's where a problem can come up, where you have labor contracts incorporating a law that already has an administrative procedure that has an enforcement mechanism. Where do you go? And I don't think it's a good idea for any employer to get in the position of having to defend something twice.
I'm good if we just kind of look at something that
We can
at
look at
least,
whether or not there's some language we can add to clarify that
perfect.
you all are also subject to our employment policies where your contract is signed.
Perfect. Next one is Appendix D. Skip over C. That actually has to do with the pay plan, and I'll explain all that.
Okay.
Under subsection E, we are proposing to increase the incentive pay from $40 to $60 a pay period for the specialized units.
Is that one of the new incentive pays that we added
Yes.
last
In
time?
2020, yes, ma'am. Subsection E4, we are proposing shift differential of 4% of pay for all hours worked. However, the employee shift must be at least 8 hours, and the shift must start after noon in order to be to qualify for shift differential. Shift differential is in line with a lot of the surrounding agencies that do incentivize officers to work the night shift. And one of the great benefits to that is you often see more tenured officers choosing to take night shifts where they can pass along their training and experience.
So you don't have rotating shifts here, you just have
No, sir.
assigned.
Yes, sir. We had proposed that in 2020. I think we used a fixed dollar amount though.
Shift differential?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think you did. Okay.
And then subsection E5. So very often there's a case where the transitionary supervisory position of corporal has to act as a sergeant for an extended period of time instead of just filling in for a shift, and would have to perform the core functions of the sergeant within the job description. We are proposing that any corporal who works as a sergeant for 15 calendar days or more will be entitled to the step and column of the sergeant in Appendix C. Very similar to if a sergeant is working out of grade as an acting commander, or an acting commander would be as an acting, I'm sorry, a commander as an acting chief.
So just so I'm clear, what you're asking is if they are assigned for a period that is expected to extend beyond 15 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Or to 15 days, then from day one of the assignment, they would be reclassified and into the sergeant.
Into that
pay
sergeant
grade.
pay block for performing the
Whatever
duties of
step
that
that they were
sergeant.
already in, it would just be a
Move from
lateral transfer.
the corporal chart to the sergeant chart,
Mhm.
same number, same A or B column.
And
So
then
same
at
step
the
and
end
column.
of the assignment, go back to wherever they would have been
Yes, ma'am.
in the corporal.
Again, it's already done for sergeants as acting commanders and commanders when they are an acting chief.
And it's more of a percentage than it would be a pay grade.
I have just a question about days. Assume that maybe you define somewhere else in the contract, but are you talking calendar days or?
Yes, sir.
working days?
Right here, it says any corporal for at least 15
Calendar
calendar days. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So if they only work 6 days during that 15 calendar day period or more, let's say they work 7 days in a 16-day calendar day period, that they would get the bump then
For those 7 days.
for those 7 days.
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to make sure we're
Yes, sir. As Ms. Nelson said, once they receive the assignment and they know that they're going to be working as a sergeant, it's usually well known ahead of time.
Yeah, what happens if it isn't? Somebody's assigned to work as a sergeant for a short period of time and then circumstances change where that has to.
Within the 15 days,
Yeah. Mhm.
then they act as I mean, I'm a sergeant. Real world example, Chris is my corporal. When I take a week off, he doesn't get sergeant pay, but it's only for 5 or 6 days, where he would assume those sergeant rules. But there's additional duties in a sergeant's job description that corporal really isn't going to have to step into except for a more tenured.
Yeah, but my only question is if the period is anticipated to be less than 15 days, but it turns out not to be the case. How does that work? Do
I
they
mean,
get back
if
pay?
for something it extends,
It gets extended,
Well,
yeah,
then it
like
would
he
be-
doesn't get back from vacation that time.
then
I think what he's asking is, would you expect it to be retroactive?
Yeah, would it
for,
be,
you
would
know,
somebody be
the
back
pay?
paid?
I would say typically in cases like this, we know if it's going to be due to some sort of sergeant outage, if you will.
So what you're talking about is more of a semi-permanent or
Yes, ma'am.
an extended period of time.
Correct.
where
And-
you have
and-
a vacancy, somebody has
Yes,
to step up.
right, I'll be.
So what's happening now when you have a vacancy, I'm sorry, Keith, but if you have a vacancy in a sergeant position and you pull up a corporal to fill that vacancy, how are we paying that corporal?
As a corporal.
So they're not getting anything
No.
additional now?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I'll use me as an example. I was out from January 19th through May 1st, 2021 with my knee. And my corporal ran the shift for that 3.5 month period. All right,
With no additional pay?
with no additional pay.
And my corporal and I went to temporary duty assignment to traffic, ran the midnight shift for 10, 11 months during my first stint on traffic without any additional incentive when he was, again, performing all the duties as though he was a
And
sergeant.
So as an example, while I was out, if an evaluation came due on one of the patrol officers, the corporal had to write the evaluation. If complaints came in on the officers, the corporal had to address and investigate all complaints. So there are duties and responsibilities that we as sergeants do that corporals don't. But when they are sitting in that position for a long period of time, now they got to do those. Those are just a couple of examples, right? If I were on vacation for a week and my corporal gets a complaint on one of the officers, I'm going to say, take the complaint, let them know the sergeant's on vacation, and I'll call them when I get back.
Got it.
All right. Appendix D, subsection F, longevity pay. We propose to bring longevity pay back. The last sentence in there was stopped for all employees hired after October 1st, 2001. We moved to strike that last sentence and reinstitute the provisions of the longevity pay for all employees.
Do you know how many employees you have right now who are receiving longevity pay? How many sworn?
I could swag a guess,
Couple?
well, a few.
A handful.
Yeah, a handful.
Yes, ma'am.
I looked at it, but it's been a little while since I looked at it, so just curious.
This would be a way, again, to incentivize those who hang around, including that golden handcuffs for the 5-year employee, which is really when we've seen you kind of get your hooks into them.
Mhm. Okay.
All right. On to the fun stuff.
There you go.
Pay scale.
So did you want to talk about merit increases or not yet?
Yeah, well, that's part of this, and I'll
Okay.
explain why.
Okay.
This appendix E.
So this is
Um,
Appendix C,
Okay.
years 1, 2, and 3, the 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25 fiscal
Okay.
years. What Scott is given to you now is looking at us, Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, and I'll explain, because this pay plan does have a few moving parts, so I'll try to explain it as best I can. So in years past, we've always tried to compare ourselves to the macro. We've looked at the entire state. We've seen how we have stacked up against other barrier island, other coastal communities, because we have never had an issue where being competitive with Neptune and Atlantic became an issue. Due to several factors, it is now becoming an issue. So the pay plan that we're proposing keeps the Jacksonville Beach Police Department in most pay categories higher than Atlantic and Neptune beaches. So if you want to look at just the first year of the pay scale, kind of like orange is the new black, $50,000 is kind of the new base pay for police departments here in Northeast Florida. Most of even rural sheriff's departments are increasing their pay to St. Johns County is likely going to start at $52,500. Nassau County, it's my understanding, Sheriff Leeper is moving to start his deputies at $54,500. So the pay plan that we've proposed is largely to make sure that we are competitive with an ever tightening labor pool.
Couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the first one, and the step one has a strike through.
Yes, ma'am. So the first way we do that is by eliminating the first step, very similar to what the city did in April.
But for the officer, your first step is not currently the $49,000.
No, that includes the pay increase, the
Okay.
COLA increase,
Say that again.
the 7% pay increase we're proposing as well.
Okay.
The first year is 7%, second year is 5%, third year is 4%.
So you adjusted it by 7% and then eliminated the
Yes,
first
ma'am.
step?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
that, as you can see, even with the 7%, we weren't able to get to that magic number 5. So
Which number 5 is that?
the first
Sorry.
number still starts with a 4.
Oh, the
50.
50,000?
Yes, ma'am. So very similar to what the city did in April, by slashing some of the lower non-union pay categories. It is a more cost-effective way to increase the starting pay rather than having to move everybody along with that train.
So you applied this 7% across all pay scales and then eliminated it?
Yes, ma'am.
So currently we have a bigger increase from year 7 to 8, I think it is, in your current pay scale.
Yes, ma'am. Between step 7 does
Between
get.
7 and 8?
Yes, ma'am.
And so does that mean that in your proposal that bump gets pushed to steps 8 and 9?
6 and 7.
Or 6 and 7?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was the old 8 and 9. It was the old step 8. It is now the new step 7.
Okay.
And the reason that we kept all the percentages the same. All we did was slash step 1, and that was to avoid having to reclassify every single employee. So you may run into that case where, especially officers around that step, we would either have to hold their pay, subtract their pay, make some sort of adjustments if we moved that larger step, which again, as you said, was at step 8.
Okay. Okay, so that's year 1.
Yes, ma'am. And everything's the same for years 2 and 3. It's just the pay, the number.
How much is the increase from year 1 to 2 and 2 to 3?
5 and 4 respectively.
So you're adding 7
7, 5,
plus, because if you're eliminating that bottom step, that's another 2 or 3%, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So approximately 10% in year 1.
Not overall, just eliminating that one step. So in other words, that
You're including the merit.
You're going from 16 steps to 15. So it means it maxes out
one step sooner for
one
officers.
step
Yes, ma'am.
sooner for officers. And there is not that similar type of adjustment for corporals and sergeants, just
So
officers, right?
We'll talk, but yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Corporals and sergeants are actually adding steps.
okay. Yeah, I see that. Okay. All right, so you got 7% here, and then we take off the first step, and then what did you say the percentages are in 2 and 3?
2 is 5%. And then 4% for the third year.
Okay.
And again, I'll point you guys back to the colorful little chart I handed out. Those numbers compare Jacksonville Beach to Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach. And when you look at officer, we are way below comparing officer to officer. However, Jacksonville Beach does have the benefit of that transitionary position of corporal in both pay and duties. If we flip to page 2, we factor in an officer at the other 2 jurisdictions compared to a corporal. We are, again, barely able to stay above their anticipated contracts because they're both in collective bargaining right now and their anticipated pay increases. So again, we do give the benefit of the assumption that because we have the corporal position, we'll go ahead and combine that in the comparative pay. And then the last page is sergeant. We're not even able to keep pace with Atlantic Beach. They significantly outpace us.
They just had an increase, right? A cost of living
They
increase
are
outside
in
of-
negotiations right now.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
didn't they do a cost of living increase midterm?
I don't believe for their police they did. I believe they held on that for their
Yeah, I
contract.
think what they said, since they were getting ready to enter into collective bargaining, they didn't get the midterm like the regular employees did. So they included it for their collective bargaining.
But this includes their, these were the pay scales as of June 1, as well as what their anticipated increases, contractual increases are
Okay,
over the next 3 years.
And there's a mistake on the first page in the legend. That should be a blue color, right, for JV minimum? It's blue, just like it is on the second page. See, that's
Probably.
blue.
yeah.
I just want to make sure. It was
That's really odd.
confusing.
Nope, yep.
That's, I just want to make sure I was reading it.
Yep, I apologize.
So that's,
No, they would just be going to the new step two. So they're just renumbering, basically.
With anyone who's already in, since they're eliminated.
The question is, what about someone who's currently in step one? When you eliminate step one, they would become in that new step one, which is 3% roughly higher.
I think we have a very, very small number. And even when the contract is ratified, I think it'll probably just be maybe the 2 that are in orientation right now.
We have one officer that her 6-month evaluation should be done, or is he getting ready to be done? It should be done.
So I was remiss in adding that, my mistake. I didn't even think about
We
the
got
brand
2
new
hires that just
hires.
started this week. So yeah,
There's the possibility you'd have people with 1+ years of experience in the same step as people starting after October 1.
No, sir. So if you guys want to go back to C, I told you we'd have to look back a little bit. Our proposal is in Appendix D, subsection C, is on just for the first year of this contract, on the anniversary date, which would avoid moving everybody on October 1 and incurring that additional cost to the city. On the anniversary date, all employees in the officer column only would move 1 additional step, and then they would move a step based on their evaluation. And the one right below. That would address, Mr. Stefopoulos, your concern of having like a 6-month employee over a 1-year employee, which we corrected in 2017, and the change we're proposing to C prevents that from happening, where you have younger officers, if you will, potentially making more than more tenured officers due to some revision in the pay plan. And I completely forgot about the brand new hires. That was my mistake.
That's right. Okay.
adding.
Now, corporals and sergeants. So this was twofold, the reason for adding steps. When the corporal position was created in, I believe it was early 2000s, it was a mere pay increase to help with retention for a lot of officers that were leaving for other sheriff's departments. Since the early 2000s, the duties that we have placed upon our corporals have significantly increased, both supervisory, management duties, what they're expected to do within the police department, as well as sergeants. So for the corporals, the old, again, this was twofold. So the reason for adding the 2 steps is to increase the gap between an officer maximum and a corporal maximum to 15%. It was 10%. We propose to increase it to 15%. And that is due to,
Officer maximum to corporal maximum?
yes, ma'am,
Okay.
was 10%.
And you're proposing to move it to a 15%?
15%. And the easiest way to accomplish that was to add 2 steps to the pay plan. That will keep steps 1 through 7 as they were within decimal points on step 7, because I think it was like a 3.001 increase versus a straight 3% increase on the old plan. So it also going back to the chart, when you incorporate corporals into the comparative with officers of other departments, keeps that number above what officers can make. So essentially in Jacksonville Beach, you have to promote to keep pace with officers at other departments.
So your intention, I'm sorry, you said keep the corporals above what an officer can make. Is that what I heard you say?
When you compare them to Atlantic and Neptune beaches, if you look at the second chart,
Keep the corporal above Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach
Without-
officer.
if we kept it at the 10%, I believe that officers at those other agencies would eclipse our first line supervisors in pay with zero of the duties that we levy on our corporals.
Okay.
And then very similarly for sergeants, the duties that the sergeants now take care of were traditionally, over the past couple of decades, have transitioned away from the lieutenants and commanders down to the sergeants, whether it is large scale event planning to management of calendars, management of the off-duty list. A lot of things that were once handled at the administration command level have been pushed down to the sergeants. So the sergeants have picked up additional duties. We're also proposing to increase the old corporal maximum to sergeant maximum was also 10%. So we are moving to make that 15%. Easiest way to do that would be to add those 3 steps. There's no real change to the administration of that. So in other words, all the maxed out sergeants would just no longer receive an Excel anymore and move back into the merit evaluation based increases already in the contract.
Refresh my recollection, how long between steps? Is it 2 years?
1 year.
1 year?
Right.
So a step is a year, so.
A step is a year, again, assuming the officer makes, officer, corporal, or sergeant makes an at least a satisfactory.
Yeah,
And a
so,
below sat
okay.
will hold them at that step.
Yeah, I understand, but it's an annual step.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that adjustment in the sergeants, adding those steps also tries to keep us somewhat in line.
And again,
We're
twofold,
behind still, but in line.
look at the, again, page 3, in line with the supervisors of the other beach agencies.
Are the other beach agencies getting a step every year?
They're all administered differently. It's my understanding. I mean, Neptune Beach has more qualifications to their steps and they can move around. It's based on training, education.
Neptune Beach adds some of those incentive pays that we step on top, they are rolled into their salary if they progress through.
It's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And then Atlantic, I believe, is a fixed calendar year step.
And do they get it every year or no?
It's my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
I don't have that contract, sorry.
Okay, yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll take a look at it. Because even though, we have 10 steps, or they have 10 or 15 or 16 steps, they're not necessarily progressing through them one at a. I know JSO does not progress one step every year, and it varies throughout the schedule. So.
And the step difference is 3% except for that 6 to 7 for
No, sir,
officers?
it varies. For the first steps, with our proposal, steps, essentially step 2, call it, through 6 are 3%. Step 7 is 8.5%, which is that big step,
Right.
the golden handcuffs, if you will. And then steps 8 through 14 are 2.7%. And the last step is 2.63 and a whole bunch of decimal points behind that. Just to get us up to
That's
the-
consistent with the way it is now.
Correct. We didn't change the
You didn't
step
change the
structure.
structure
No,
at
ma'am.
all, you just changed the amount.
No, ma'am. And in fact, if you see the only change, if you will, for the officer, elimination of step 1 and then the 7% cost of living adjustment.
Okay. Any questions?
Any questions on the very confusing
I
proposal?
think
for the
I think I understand it.
Now, have y'all done any costing out of this in terms of an annual budget impact?
No, sir.
Eric,
We can do that. I just
we-
wanted to know
we
whether
spent a
you
lot
had.
of money back in 2020. And we weren't gonna spend a lot of money this time.
But don't you have a calculator on your iPhone?
Okay,
And that's all of your proposals, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that everything on the list?
No, ma'am, you had your
So
three,
you-
but that's for us. Yes, ma'am.
That's everything that you have?
I have reached the end of my book.
So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Guys, bringing those proposals in on the first day, I love it.
Yeah.
But obviously, we have a lot to digest and talk about too, so,
No, we
uh,
didn't expect anything.
I
so.
don't know if we're
Yeah, but
prepared
if we,
to answer any of
if
these.
Wait a
we
minute,
won
we
you
got
over right
TA.
now, we can TA it all.
Hey,
We
did good, wouldn't we?
TA'd a whole stack, that's a good start.
Do you have your three, Karen?
I do not,
Uh-oh.
because frankly, I wasn't expecting we would take this much progress today.
Oh,
I was thinking that today might be more about introductions and ground rules and expectations and that sort of thing. But,
sorry, I jumped right ahead.
but we
all right.
do have we will have some proposals next time
Okay, good.
for you all to start considering. I don't think we need to caucus or have any discussion today. We're gonna go back and obviously review and discuss as a team, so.
Do you want to maybe
anything
pick
else
another
we need to
date,
talk
or
to
do you want
Yeah,
to
we
do that after?
definitely
I
want
would say let's.
if we're done today, we can start looking at dates for the next meeting.
Y'all, y'all have to digest all that, so let
It's
us
gonna
know.
take us a little bit of time, and obviously there'll be some costing, Ashley, that needs to take place.
Ashley to work.
So we don't want to be too hasty. We do need a little bit of time before we schedule the next meeting.
Do we think by the 22nd?
Let's-
That's 2.5 weeks.
We could probably go, you won't be there. When will you be there? Well, you won't be at the meeting, so at the next meeting, it will be me, Ashley, Sandy, and Elise at the table. So Eric's gonna be working with us from afar. So we just need to really work around 4 schedules instead of 6 or 8. So the next meeting, I would like to do it maybe within 2 weeks or the week of the 15th, 16th, 17th. If there's a date in there that works for everyone.
We're going live with our financials that week.
Not a good week for
The
Ashley.
22nd.
So the 22nd is what Keith recommended the first time, so I'm good with that. Anytime except 8 a.m. to 9 a.m.
On the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
You good?
Mhm. So
Sandy, have you got your
It's your
calendar?
work day, Keith.
But the 22nd is fine, but I think that Thursday is the only morning that I will not be available.
Correct.
Okay, so the 22nd Monday is good for you?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm okay on the 22nd if we do it around the same time frame, 1 o'clock.
That's fine with me.
That way I can get check cover, I can get coverage, stuff like that.
Okay, got it.
August
So
22nd
everybody's
at
good
1.
with the August 22nd at 1 o'clock?
Perfect.
And
Chris?
As an example of the FOP bank request, I will have burnt 2.5 hours of vacation today. I will have to burn vacation on the 22nd. Scott's gonna have to burn some vacation or comp for being here today, so really appreciate that consideration.
Duly
It's not just
noted.
for us, it's for future people that are gonna be sitting at this table. This most likely will be my last contract.
Yeah, you can't be saying that.
I wanna go out with a bang.
It won't be the same.